Marianne, what's in your memo?
Thank you, Robbie. At the Oscars in 1999, a classic act had the entire nation laughing. The late comic Robin Williams came out on the stage with a hilarious bit called "Blame Canada, Blame Canada, Blame Canada. Everything's gone wrong since Canada came along, blame Canada." There were lyrics that referred to serious issues like who gets to own Celine Dion, and it was all one big joke, see? Because obviously we didn't have a beef with Canada. The idea of blaming Canada for anything was so absurd that the song was received on both sides of the border as a very funny joke. Well, thanks to our bully-in-chief now occupying the White House, it isn't funny anymore. The United States is waging economic warfare on Canada, and even worse, the president is doubling down on his menacing message that Canada should become our 51st state. President Trump said that would make all of their problems, tariffs and everything else, he said, totally disappear. Canada's having none of that, and why would they? They're the ones with universal health care, not us. They're the ones whose schools come in fourth in international rankings, while we come in at 22. They're the ones who, according to the U.S. News and World Report, rank in the top 5 internationally in terms of quality of life, while the United States ranks anywhere between 13 and 22. Maybe that's why President Trump is insisting on Canada becoming the 51st state. Many assumed it was a joke at first, but POTUS has been deadly serious. So much so that their newly elected Prime Minister, Mark Carney, said this.
America is not Canada.
Les États-Unis, ce n'est
And
pas
Canada
le Canada.
never, ever
le Canada
will be part of
ne
America
fera jamais
in
partie des
any
États-Unis
way, shape, or
d'une
form.
façon ou d'une autre.
Trump justifies his aggressive behavior by saying that Canada is responsible for a large amount of undocumented migrants and a significant amount of fentanyl coming into the United States. But neither claim is supported by fact. 1% of the number of the people who crossed into the United States came through our northern border in 2024. Moreover, only 1% of the fentanyl in our country came from Canada, only enough to fill a small suitcase, in fact. In fact, by some estimations, more drugs are flowing from the United States to Canada than from Canada to the United States. Our relationship with Canada has been a good one, almost like cousins. We've enjoyed the world's most comprehensive trading relationship, supporting millions of jobs in both countries. We've been each other's largest trade partners, with $2.7 billion worth of goods and services crossing the border each day. Most economists would say, you don't mess with that. Take the win. Yet the president doesn't want that win, claiming erroneously that Canada has been taking advantage of us for years. So he placed a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. Then Canada responded with equal tariffs of American electricity, to which Trump responded with a threat of 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. So this was yesterday, and after several tense hours, both sides backed down. But in no way are things now running smoothly, particularly because those tariffs were initiated at midnight last night. This is the president's MO, but Canada will not cave. It understands that the economies of both nations are deeply interdependent, and a threat to one carries an inherent threat to the other, nor will it ever cede sovereignty, no matter what the threat. Let's watch what White House spokesman Caroline Leavitt, in typical let's deny the facts fashion, described all that chaos.
The president has continued to deliver on his promises to the American people. According to new polling that was released at the beginning of this week by CBS News, an overwhelming 70% of Americans said that President Trump is following through on what he pledged to do during his historic campaign.
But this is not a win for anyone. It is dangerous. 25 years ago, we joked about blaming Canada. Today, we're giving Canada a very good reason to seriously blame us.
Look, I agree largely with you, Marianne, that we should not have conflict with our northerly neighbors. There is a lot about Canada to like, including that they value economic freedom to a greater degree than us in some cases. Actually, they've been, by libertarian organizations, routinely rank Canada above the U.S. in terms of having less regulated markets, actually. So far from being some kind of progressive dystopia, Canada is in some ways less progressive than our country in ways I approve of. I want to have good relations with Canada. I don't want to do the tariffs. I've said that very clearly. I think the tariffs will be toxic for our economy and ultimately hamper the rest of Trump's agenda, which I do agree with. I want to trade with Canada. Now, I will say that Canada, I don't want it to be the 51st state because that would give more Senate votes to liberals because people there are more liberal. I would be terrified to they're hostile, their government, to our First Amendment values. The kind of debanking and arresting of protesters that happened during COVID was, I think, just horrifying. And that's most of the American rights animus toward Canada is now based on how the truckers' protests and the COVID stuff was handled. I don't want people who were that in favor of lockdowns and violating speech of COVID dissidents to have any say in our governance. But I am happy to trade with them and be neighborly and have good economic policies with respect to Canada.
You know, for me, hearing all of your thoughts and your pronouncements about Canada, for me the point is, you're not Canadian. It's none of your business. They are a sovereign nation. That's the point here. This is an imperialistic threat that our president is making, and it's not good for Canada, obviously, but I don't think it's good for us.
One note I had for you, though, Marianne, that performance of Blame Canada that you referred to. So that was Robin Williams performing the song from South Park.
Yeah, I know.
Which is a terrific satire. I love South Park. And
right, many people let me know that actually after I had already written the piece, but I had first seen it on the Oscars, and of course with a great affection for Robin Williams. It would have been considered inconceivable decades ago that we were having a serious argument with Canada over anything. And this, once again, is the bullying of our president. And a lot of people say about things like this, oh, so many people told me who voted for him, oh, Marianne, don't take him seriously. He just says things. He doesn't just say things. He means these things. And, of course, as everybody's saying, during his first administration, there were people, sane people, sophisticated adults in the room who were keeping him from his most outrageous impulses. And today, there are no guardrails. There's just people who've been told that there wouldn't. And I think there are a lot of people who voted for him who have buyer's remorse. I have to believe that because I don't think that the American people appreciate a president who goes around literally bullying the world.
I mean, I don't see a lot of evidence about that, and I think the coming off of the guardrails is largely a good thing. But, what can I say? I agree with a lot of the things Trump does, and I don't agree with everything. I'm not like a mindless pro-Trump partisan, so I'm not going to defend every single thing he does. I think the conflict with Canada with respect to the tariffs is going to end up hurting us just as much as it hurts them, and it is the number one concern of Americans that prices are too high. Americans just want the government to hands off the economy so that it runs relatively smoothly, and we have prices brought under control, and we have general prosperity and good trading relationships with our neighbors. Occasionally, they might need to get smacked into line for some reason, and we've got to be cognizant of the threat of China. But just escalating everything at all times is, you're right, not good policy. And Trump seems to know that, because then when the stock market crashed, he immediately said, we're not going to do the tariffs. And then there was recovery, and he said, okay, we will do them. And then it crashed again. So come on, guys, you know what's going to happen.
Let's remember, this is not just tariffs against Canada at this point. As of midnight last night, we're talking about a global trade war, because he's also talking, not just talking, he is imposing these tariffs also on Europe and on Australia. And Europe, as well as Canada, has made it clear that they will be placing reciprocal tariffs on us. So we're off and running.
I mean, I'm glad to hear.
And also, when you say Americans just want, you can't speak for all Americans. You can speak for your crowd, but that's about half of us. So not all Americans want the U.S. government to just take their hands off and let unfettered capitalism in its soulless, unethical form simply have its way with us. Now,
why are you?
I mean, what all of us want.
This is interesting. Like, I am glad to hear Democrats so exercised about tariffs being bad. Correct, but tariffs are bad because they're a violation of free market economics and free trade.
Well,
that's what's bad about them. So I'm glad to hear Democrats concede that they're bad, but doesn't that also just suggest then that the entire progressive economic project is bad?
No, first of all, it doesn't. But secondly, I think most people, both on the left and the right, recognize that there are places where, once again, scalpel rather than hatchet, there can be in negotiations places where an aspect of protectionism and an aspect of tariffs can make sense. It's just this broadside on everybody's economy but ours. which is the problem I think any American should have on the left or the right. And of course, what the American people need to wake up to is that this is going to hurt American businesses, American consumers. And apparently the phones were ringing off the hook with people in the White House yesterday, business leaders. What the hell are you doing? An editorial in Wall Street Journal, claiming that this is the most absurd, insane thing that they've ever heard of. More and more Americans are waking up to the chaos of this administration and the fact that this president, certainly on the issue of economics, but also on the issue of the U.S. Constitution, doesn't even know what he's talking about, or at very least does not care.
Up next, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that the government has the right to withdraw an individual's green card. We will discuss that very controversial detention of a pro-Palestinian activist student at Columbia. Stay with us.